Hey, it's Tim. In this video I want to talk about some recent changes I made to the Chords device. In the settings mode, down here we have 4 purple pads, and these give us information about the mode for each channel. So if I click on the matrix here, you can see there's a number for each of the channels, 1 through 16. And we've got a bunch of them have an X, which means they're inactive. You can activate different channels using this dial. I typically have 8 channels set up, and I use channels 5 to 12. So in this case, the first 4 channels and the last 4 channels are inactive. I can use this dial to select a channel. So it updates depending on what you have active. So the lowest channel I have is channel 5, and as I move the dial, you can see what the setting is. So I'm going to select channel 5, and over here I can select a mode, and the mode is going to determine how notes are transposed, or how incoming notes are transposed in relation to the current chord which we have set up in our chord progression. So I can change it to the first mode, which is harmonize 1, and as you can see, it's populated some information to give us an idea of what's going to happen with incoming notes. So in mode 1, notes trigger the current chord notes, and C will always be the root note, E will always be the 3rd, G will always be the 5th, and B the 7th. And you can see there's some information here that explains what happens. C, E, G, and B are the chord notes. D, F, and A are non-chord notes, but they are scale degrees. And then here we have the rest of the notes are set to round to chord, which means any other notes will be round to scale degrees or chord notes. I can change that here and allow non-scale notes as well. I'll leave it like this for now. So if I have a look at my scene, I've got a chord progression of chords, and if I now come to LK, you can see that I've got a 1-bar pattern with some notes on a C. So I'd expect to hear the root note of the chord. And we just want to make sure that we're on scene 2. Okay, so you can hear there that we're triggering the root note of the chord, C, G, A, F. Now, if we want to change the inversion, sometimes we want our bass note to follow more like the harmonic root of the chord progression, so following the lowest note in the chord. And these are the lowest notes of the chord, but I can bring them closer together using inversions. So if I get this second chord and invert it down 1, we've got now a C followed by a D, and then we can invert this one down 2 as well, to have the root note as a C, and I'll invert this one down 1 time, and now we have our chords set to root notes that are closer together. Now if I press play, you'll hear that I'm not playing the lowest note of the chord, I'm still playing the root note, C, G, A, and F. And that's because in this mode, C, E, G, and B will always play the root note of play the chords in this fashion, which means that C will always be the root, E will always be the 3rd. Now, as I said, sometimes it's more useful to have our notes follow the inverted form of the chord. And to do that, we can switch over to harmonize 2, and now the chord notes are ordered low to high. C will trigger the lowest note, E will trigger the middle note, and G will trigger the high note if it's a triad, and B will trigger the highest note if it's a tetrad. So if it's a tetrad, you'll have them ordered in this fashion. C, E, G, and B will be the chord notes ordered from low to high, and we have also allowing scale notes in this mode as well. So now if we come back and play the same chord progression, so what happens now is that we're playing the lowest note of the chord with our LK clip, which is set to C. So C is always triggering the lowest note of the chord. And as I said, this can work better with things like bass lines. So now if we solo another part and play, sorry, just put scene, we got scene 2. I'm doing this with the mouse so you can sort of see where I'm clicking. We also need to set a mode for channel 7, and I'll set that to harmonize 1. And you can see that we've got a pattern here. And it's moving with the notes of the chord, whereas the bass line is sort of staying static. And just to compare, if I come back to the bass line and switch that back to harmonize 1, it sounds like this. And you can hear that everything, all the notes are moving in parallel motion. So as they move up, the bass line moves up as well as the melody or the lead part. And as it comes down, the lead and the bass line come down, which sounds very harmonious, but not always desirable. Sometimes contrary motion, for example, where we have the bass line doing something different to what the melody line's doing when it follows the chord progression, it sounds more interesting. And that's what we can achieve by using this harmonize 2 mode. And I think that having the option is great because it gives you some much more natural and appealing results. So there is one more mode, and that is, we can see with channel 9, or it's got set to keys, that is the chords mode. And in the chords mode, note in triggers the current chord. So if you send a C note in, it will trigger the chord in its root position, regardless of what you have set up in here. Notes above C will invert up, and notes below C will invert down. So I come back to my LK and select keys. You can see I've set up a custom scale with C as the root, and I've added 4 notes above, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the fourth inversion is kind of like moving the whole chord up an octave. And then inverting down, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm inverting down each time. So now we can just make sure that I'm on the scene. Okay, so here we are with 3 different instruments using the 3 different modes: Harmonize 1, Harmonize 2, and the chord mode. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of an idea of how these modes work and how you can use them in your compositions. Hope this helps. I'll see you in the next one.